Living on the Edge mini-term is one of the courses that I'm involved in, and I think that's been one of the best opportunities that I've had at Union College, and I think that for every student that's taken the trip or gone on the trip, it's been a significant moment for them.
We went from Anchorage to Fairbanks, and we saw the geology, glaciers, and landslides, and other superficial features related to the natural hazards in that area.
You're with the same group of 10 students, and there's 2 professors with you, and you guys live in tents, you camp the whole time. I think we had maybe a night or 2 in a hotel.
We spend time looking at a number of different problems with respect to geohazards in Alaska and trying to understand how scientists and how engineers and how policymakers have come together to apply their knowledge as a group, as an interdisciplinary group, and how people live on the edge, literally.
It's a play on words because not only is it on the edge of a tectonic region, but which is what causes the subduction of one tectonic plate under the other, causes all the earthquakes, volcanism, and tsunami events that we talk about on the trip. But it's also what's known as the last frontier, or the last American frontier. So it's not only life on the edge geologically, but life on the edge for humans.
Alaska was phenomenal. The scenery just blew me away. I grew up around the Rockies and I grew up around the Sierras, and I still could not get over how small I was when I showed up. It is on a totally different scale.
It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. From the high peaks of the Central Alaska Range to the boreal forest in the front of the Central Alaska Range and through Glen Ellen, down to the coastal areas and the coastal areas of Cordova and Kodiak, where there's abundant marine wildlife and incredible and spectacular marine tidewater glaciers. It has the most dramatic scenery I've ever seen in my life.
You're really immersed in the geology, which I thought was awesome.
We spend a lot of time studying the effects of the 1964 Great Alaskan Earthquake. That was a devastating earthquake that had very important on-land effects, including the uplift of large areas and the subsidence of large areas, as well as through-going fault zones. So we go to Kodiak Island, we look at tsunami deposits and study how tsunami deposits deposit sand sheets in bays and how some bays have been affected by tsunamis and other bays haven't. In Cordova, we look at areas that have been uplifted, and in that case we see evidence of the way in which the trees have changed their growth pattern, how barnacles and other marine life were killed when they were uplifted out of the marine area. And then we go inland, and when we go inland to the Central Alaska Range, we spend a considerable amount of time looking at the Denali Fault. The Denali Fault, like the San Andreas Fault, is a long, through-going strike-slip fault system that cuts the Central Alaska Range. And in the process of building the Alaska Pipeline, they had to cross the Denali Fault, and they had to make some very special adjustments for the Alaska Pipeline as it crossed this active strike-slip fault. In 2002, that fault zone ruptured, and when it ruptured, it shook the pipeline like a piece of spaghetti, but the pipeline didn't rupture because the engineering that was done on it was perfect for the conditions that were predicted with respect to the anticipated shaking.
That engineering wouldn't have been possible if we didn't have scientists there who knew the recurrence interval and whether or not this fault was active. We spent time looking at the damage of the 2002 earthquake and what it did to trees. It ripped trees apart that were right along the surface rupture of this earthquake. And I think the impact of looking at the pipeline itself and what that means to North Americans and those of us that are addicted to oil is a huge part of the trip.
The work that we did for our class portion of it was engaging. I mean, it was hands-on. It's like an outdoor classroom. It was a perfect learning environment, and then at the same time you were able to interact with your professors in an informal manner. They weren't just, you know, Professor Garver, you know, yeah, I have to raise my hand and ask a question. You had different discussions on various topics of varying degrees of seriousness, and you know, you really got to know the people that you're out there with. So that was a fantastic experience.
We truly are in the lion's den.